thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of insight from in the aisle in our supermarkets. And a thank you to Neville Spear, too, who's, I think, forwarded our information to the association. Neville's aware of some of the work we've been doing for quite some time, so thanks, Neville. Meal planning in the supermarket aisle, there's a lot of questions about, and when do we decide what to eat for dinner tonight? And we'll kind of go into that a little bit, talk a little bit about what we learned from shoppers on their choices of recipes in the supermarket, which is a service that we provide. ShoptoCook was founded in 2001, and we are an interactive recipe network. And our focus is to try to increase food sales by helping shoppers change their recipe routine. And we'll talk about what a recipe routine is in a little bit. And trying to encourage both new meal ideas for familiar or unfamiliar items. Our solutions are typically in the meat aisle or meat and seafood aisle. Always in an interactive display unit. So you can walk up to the unit, touch it, and information is going to come to you specifically about meal preparation, meal ideas. We use a lot of different types of hardware, and I think going forward you'll find that interactivity will morph into your iPhone or a BlackBerry Storm. So think about this not just in the present format of a piece of hardware and a printer sitting in an aisle, but it soon is morphing over to a personal PDA type of device. We also provide recipe content on the web for supermarkets. This is a new evolution of what we've been doing in the past, started a few months ago, and is turning out to be very popular because the meal planning at home is a part of the life of some shoppers, as is meal planning in the aisle. It depends upon how prepared we go into the store as to which service you're apt to use. Some curious data, and I'm going to be mixing a little bit of data throughout this because we measure every touch, which is a unique kind of data set. We follow what the shopper is doing and where their interests lie. On the web, the greatest usage of our recipe solutions is on Wednesdays and Thursdays. In the store, the highest usage is on Saturdays and Sundays. So already we break the market up into two separate segments. We've got a market that plans, which has historically been the minority, and then we have another segment of the market that makes its decision in the aisle, pushing a cart as you're walking through. Two very different approaches towards meal planning. We also developed a rather innovative solution with Mettler Toledo. We patented a concept of integrating product information into the service counter meat and seafood scale. So when a butcher lays a piece of meat or a salmon fillet on the scale, as soon as they lay that item on the scale, recipes appear for the item the butcher just put on the scale at the same moment. And then the butcher engages the shopper if they'd like some ideas about what else they could do with that particular item that they just bought. The shopper can browse them while the butcher's wrapping and print the recipe on the spot to the shopper to go with whatever they purchased. And there's an important reason for that, and this is, again, another kind of factor to think about. This study came from Delhaize in Europe. Delhaize is one of the largest supermarket chains in the United States on the East Coast. They own Hannaford, Food Lion, Bloom, Sweet Bay, Harvey's, one of the largest chains in the country. They found that in their own internal study that when sales per visit, per transaction, were 24% higher when somebody other than just the cashier made a connection with the customer. That is, if you can get somebody in a store to even talk to a customer about what their needs are, they found that sales increased almost 24%. So personal engagement is a strategic initiative in this chain starting in 2009. Here's how it works. A shopper can pick up any package of meat or seafood or anything in the perishable department and scan the item. There's a barcode reader on the unit. You scan the item and recipes appear instantly for whatever product you just scanned. The shopper then browses recipes, selects one, prints it out, and has the shopping list of the ingredients in their hand while they're in the shopping, while they're in the store. Or they can scan or just simply touch the screen, and if you touch the screen, there's a series of category filters around meal planning, and there's about 3 or 4 of these pages. Pay attention to the categories here, because I'm going to be sharing with you in 2008 what are the most popular categories that shoppers are going to find meal ideas when they are in the aisle ready to buy. In this case, we have what's new and seafood for kids, meals and minutes, desserts, chicken, but we're constantly changing these. We connect to every one of these units centrally from our offices in Buffalo, New York, and we change the content and the filters on a weekly basis so that they're current with events, with the season, with what's going on locally or regionally. The shopper can touch one of those buttons and then recipes appear in that category. Now, we're also always changing the recipes that are associated in these categories. So in this case, chicken recipes appeared if that was the button I selected. If I looked into detail on one of them, it gives me the ingredients and the basic instructions and what to do with it. It gives wine pairings. We also can provide coupons related to any item in that recipe. So you begin to see it's a very simple way to get a recipe or a meal idea in front of the shopper as they're doing their meal planning. It also creates an enormous amount of information about what are the preferences of shoppers in the aisle actually ready to make a decision to purchase. And we also throw in an aisle locator so that it tells you where in the store the ingredient's at, or you can search for where a particular item's at. What we do basically is use technology to solve shopper problems in the store. That's the essence of the business. The challenge is about 46% of the shopper's biggest daily dilemma is trying to figure out what to have for dinner tonight. At 6 o'clock, 70% of the population still doesn't know what they're going to eat. About 58% of shoppers shop without a list. Now, they're saying, recent research suggests that with the economy, there's more meal planning taking place and a little bit more preparation, so we'll see how that pans out. Many shoppers lack the skill, the confidence, or the experience to try something new or to experiment with particularly a more expensive cut. 87% of the shoppers, this is from the Pork Board, prepare the same recipe 3.5 times per month. And I imagine I could pull everybody in here, and you probably aren't too far off having a bit of a routine on the same proteins produced or prepared about 3 or 4 different ways. We usually have about 3 or 4 kind of primary proteins, and we know about 3 or 4 ways to make them. And that's our recipe portfolio. And shoppers, as a result of that, complain of the recipe rut. The most common quote we hear in the aisle of a supermarket is, "I'm sick and tired of cooking chicken breast the same old way," unquote. Anywhere in the country we go, we'll hear that quote. Now, the typical supermarket handles about 40,000 SKUs, 40,000 individual items, but the typical shopper usually buys about 400 unique SKUs in a year, and about half of those on a regular basis. So we've got stores that are designed to have a massive amount. The old version of supermarkets, I think this is changing a bit, are the large stores, massive amounts of SKUs. But the reality is, for an individual shopper, you have a very narrow window of products that you're interested in. I looked at the real data from one chain. This is the actual sales of protein products. 10 specific SKUs represented over 22% of the entire meat sales in that chain. 4 SKUs of chicken breast, 4 SKUs of ground beef, a round roast, and a London broil. Those 10 specific products represented almost a quarter of the entire sales of the store. And that begins to kind of give a glimpse into some of the both maybe opportunities, but some of the problems that we face going forward in changing shopper behavior in the aisle and creating more opportunity for the industry. There's a lot of data up here, and I'm just going to kind of highlight a few points. This data shows every recipe that was shown to a shopper for 2008, and on the left-hand side where it says the source, those are the names of the buttons that the shopper used to get into a particular recipe that they ultimately printed. Number 1 is for kids. Matter of fact, there's several blue. There's for kids. Here's kids' produce recipes, kids' fruit recipes, kids' veggie recipes. Anybody have a guess on what's going on in the aisle of the nation's supermarkets and what the number 1 problem is being faced by the shopper? It's 25% of all the recipes printed in our network. The path for them came through kids, for kids. How to help kids eat better in case of fruits and vegetables. Some of the things that are the kids are printing or their parents are printing with the kids, not exactly on the healthy nutrition list, but that's life having kids. You make compromises. The second most popular category or the source of getting recipes is scanning an item. And I'll show you a little bit of detail. What are shoppers scanning when they walk up and get recipes? That gives us a very detailed look at what shoppers are interested in. What's new is number 3. Again, giving us an indication that we have shoppers in this country that are begging for variety. They just don't know how to get it. Dessert lovers, we can talk all we want about health and wellness, but I guarantee you, and we'll see it in a couple different ways, life is a portfolio. On one hand, we want health and wellness whenever we're interviewed, we'll say that that's important. On the other hand, we like sweets, we like fat, and we're always going to be having a little bit of both. The question is the balance of the two. And then meals and minutes, always a very popular category. The orange ones are the straight commodities. So, and this is one that probably the wrong audience to mention this, but seafood is the number 1 source category button that shoppers will select in the store. Now, why do you think seafood would be, in terms of a category that people are looking for ideas, why are they going there before they're going to beef, chicken, and pork? If you ask in your own family the confidence level of fish, seafood preparation, you'll probably find that there's less confidence in seafood than there is in any other of the primary proteins. So what is the consumer telling? If I looked at seafood sales in a typical supermarket, it wouldn't even show up on the radar screen. Less than 1%. No comparison to chicken breast or pork or beef. Yet from a needs perspective, it's among the top. There's both a problem and an opportunity. Great grilling, extremely popular throughout the summer. But here's some other interesting ones. And bear in mind that these kind of events only are on there for a little while. Halloween is one of the most popular holidays for special food and recipe meal ideas. Back to school, St. Patrick's Day, a huge one. It's only on for 3 weeks in our system, but it shows up in the top 30 for the year. So we have a lot of shoppers that are interested in ideas and variety. Top scanned items: number 1, chicken parts. Number 2, steaks. Number 3, ground beef. Why would somebody scan ground beef to get recipes ideas for? The reason is they're so sick and tired of eating ground beef the same way, and that's their routine, that they want new ideas. They want other ways to eat things that they're familiar with. Number 4 is fish, scanning the physical package. Beef roast, which is a good sign. I mean, we've got a lot of people scanning a roast to get more ideas. And then vegetables. So we see, and this list is kind of telling, because this is something that a shopper's physically picked up an item, walked over and scanned it, and then printed the recipe. You can also search for recipes using keywords. Just type in a word and find a recipe. The number 1 word typed in this chain in 2008 was chicken. I'm so sick and tired of eating chicken breast the same old way. That's what we're solving here. Number 2, cookies. Number 3, steak. Number 4, shrimp. Number 5, beef in general. And then number 6, chili, followed by cake. Pizza. So we see shoppers looking for kind of in solutions like beef stew or pizzas, or others are just trying to find an idea quick for something. And again, you're in the store. Our primary time that the units are being used is between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So people coming home from work trying to come up with something to get on the plate and making a decision quick. Does it work? One retailer that we worked with made a conscious effort that they wanted to sell more turkey parts, turkey cuts, in the off-season in April. So we took all of our categories, meals and minutes and kids, and we substituted recipes using turkey parts and pushed the priority. We control the order at which these recipes appear too. So we just flooded the first group of recipes with turkey for a 30-day period and increased the sale of turkey 12% in the entire chain for that month by giving the shoppers another idea and a fresh way to look at using a product that they typically would not have purchased. The trends that we see in the market, in our business, it's all about solutions. It is not about the product. You can talk about beef, or we can talk about the commodity, but from a shopper's perspective, the only thing I'm worried about is what is on the plate. And the motivations for finding ideas come from events and needs. One of the popular buttons that, from a health and wellness perspective, that's shot up in the last year is gluten-free. And we're going to keep trying to put more recipes in our network for gluten-free. Another popular button is diabetic. Those are need states, not products. And the focus on marketing really needs to be about need states. You need to make mealtime interesting. Everybody's looking for variety. They're begging for variety. if I looked at what's being sold in a supermarket, I'd get rid of about 90% of the entire meat case and just put chicken breast and ground beef and pork chops. And that would cover the sales. But that's taking the wrong message from the data. Shoppers are compromised right now. They buy what they're buying because they don't have solutions in mind, they don't have other ideas, they don't have the expertise. When you bring them the answers, if you bring them solutions, they'll move out of that pattern of buying the same thing every time. And for an industry, we have to be very careful that as those needs shift and we're producing an animal that meets the specifications of the grocery store buyer who is buying based upon what is selling, and what sells is based entirely upon a compromise of shoppers who just don't know and are not buying what they really want to buy, you're following potentially a path taking you down the entirely wrong direction. And that's what the data in the aisle shows. Healthy eating, it is real. It's important, but it's a portfolio. There'll be cookies with that vegetable. And this one is in the last year, and I think this is a trend that impacts us all here. Local production. The National Grocers Association just came out with a survey for 2008 or 2009, and it had two very interesting findings in it. Number one, what concerns consumers the most about the food they eat was the question. The top reason is the desire to be healthy and eat what's good for us. That's the number one consumer request for the food they eat from a national survey by the National Grocers Association. Now, ignore the cookies and the cake. That's part of life. We want our sweets with it. But that's where a lot of grocers are focusing. Number two, the improvements that consumers want in their primary food stores. Number one, price cost savings. Number two, I imagine everybody would have flunked this. The number two most requested is they want local production in the supermarket. And more supermarkets are now adding a section for local food. And that means produce, but it also is going to mean meat. In New York, in the city, there's a whole movement emerging in Brooklyn right now of local food production, local small processing plants starting to meet the need that's emerging in local. And that is a very different trend from what we've seen in terms of the industrialization process. The bottom line is we've found recipes sell. It's the solutions that are selling. It's the shoppers that are really looking for variety and opportunity, begging for somebody to help them learn how to use more of what this group produces. Thank you.